I'm Sarah Myerscough, and this is the Insurance Brokers Podcast, where we're talking to the personalities and the businesses that sit behind our industry. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe on your chosen podcast streaming platform. Hello, Lucy. Thank you so much for joining me on the Insurance Brokers Podcast. It is fabulous to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Me too, actually, because often I talk to lots of different people in the insurance industry and it's all really interesting stuff. And I always learn something. What I'm particularly excited about is we both come at this from a marketing and sales background. So, in the insurance industry. So I'm really interested to see where and how this goes. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview about who you are and a little bit about your business?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lucy Mowatt. I am the founder of a content marketing agency based in Norwich. We started life in 2018 as Method Marketing, and we specialise in working with clients in regulated and compliance-heavy industries because they have very specific needs around writing articles, website content, even podcasting, things like that. They have very specific needs. So we have specialised working with those sorts of industries and companies like insurance brokers.
And what's your background before 2018?
So I started out my career as a magazine editor. So I worked predominantly for a contract publishing agency. We produced magazines for other organisations, but then moved sideways into marketing with a particular focus on content. I have been agency side and in-house with my last role in-house at Insurance Brokers before setting up Method Marketing.
Fabulous. So is that why the focus for Method Marketing was regulated industries because of that previous role?
I think it's partly that. So we do have experience actually as a team. So I have worked with financial services and insurance before. My team also have experience in financial services and have worked in regulated industries as well. And we do just find we have a lot of expertise that we can help those sorts of businesses make inroads into the marketing and just start driving results. So I think it's come full circle, if you know what I mean. So the more experience we get, the more we're attractive for those sorts of businesses, and round and round it goes. But yes, I think it's an underserved area, and we've certainly found that, we've worked with companies who haven't necessarily had great experiences with marketing or find that they don't get the results they're looking for, whereas we can really help with that.
I think that's fabulous. And I think it kind of echoes some of my experience in terms of marketing in financial services and the insurance industry and how it's viewed. So I think what we've kind of planned to talk about are why, or I suppose the top 5 reasons that regulated industries find marketing challenging, really. So really looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Do you want to kick off? What do you think the top reason is that marketing is so challenging in this area?
We do find a lot of it's around finding the time. So one of the top challenges we have, or our clients have sort of expressed with us is, we want to do X, Y, and Z, but we don't have the time. We want to build a new website, but we don't have the time to write the content. We want to run this event, but we don't have the time to organise it. And I think we've sort of also found that as a sort of hand in hand with that is there is not necessarily a strategy from the top down. So marketing is more of a reactive activity rather than a proactive activity. So there's no consistency with what's happening, and then things happen at the last minute. So then it really does feel like there's not enough time to get everything done because it's not in the planner. There's no time set aside for it for the marketing team or for the in-house team. We've worked with a couple of organisations building websites, and they said that their team were going to write the content. But obviously, the teams are, doing their roles, selling insurance or working on claims and things like that. They don't have time to do the website content, for instance.
There's a real fine line, isn't there, in terms of not having the time versus not prioritizing it or really believing that this is worthy of the time. Sort of everything else takes priority. So I've come across circumstances where time is an issue, but often it's priority is an issue. Why is it? Why is it that marketing is not given the same priority in many, many instances as, for example, sales is, when actually the two are very, very interlinked and complement each other incredibly if done well?
It is interesting. I think there is a certain focus on sales because the perception is that there's more of an impact on the bottom line, probably, whereas marketing maybe is viewed as a bit more wishy-washy. I think that's possibly part of it. And you often see in organisations where there's a head of sales and marketing, and by and large, I don't think I've ever seen an organisation where it's someone with a marketing background doing that role. It's normally a sales person doing that role, and they tend to prioritise sales. And I do understand that, you want to bring in more business and increase the bottom line. But I think, as you say, marketing and sales go hand in hand. And I think marketing often supply the content and the supporting materials to get that sale across the line. So I think it's a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of underestimation of marketing and its power is just to sort of do it reactively and just focus solely on the sales side of it.
I've also found, and I totally agree with what you're saying, I've also found that there's a very reactive way of viewing social media. So if you say marketing, people think I need to be on LinkedIn and Facebook or Instagram or whatever's, and I need to post weekly. Check, done, marketing finished. Now let me go and concentrate on the sales. And when I did some training a long time ago now, something that really stuck with me was the trainer saying, if you imagine a business, the pipework of a house being the pipework of a business, marketing is the pipes and the sales are how hard you turn the taps. And I really like that analogy because it shows how integrated they are when done properly. So again, what you're talking about, the top-down strategy, who do we want to market to? Where do they sit? What are they interested in? Therefore, how can we help them? And all of that is marketing and sales. And I don't really know where the line is, but that idea is not, it's on paper, it's not felt, or, the culture doesn't believe that generally in the insurance industry. So it's time priority for me. And I don't know how you change that mindset.
Yeah, I think for me, I was also always taught about the marketing funnel, that you start at the top and you have to have a level of awareness and then driving those people through the stages to conversion to sale. And actually marketing is that top bit. It's, the being found on Google. It's the being, reaching the right people on social media. It's all of those things, going to the right events and having the right materials. Marketing helps with all that stuff that gets that sale. And I don't know why it's forgotten. I don't know, maybe if it is because lots of people who are in senior leadership positions are from that sales background and therefore put a lot of emphasis on sales maybe. But I will be interested to know the reason for it.
I'd be interested too. I'd be interested if anybody listening has any thoughts on this, whether you are a one-man band, whether you are, a director in a large brokerage or insurance company. I'd be really interested. I do see the tide changing though. I am definitely seeing a lot of change. And I think that's coming with an awareness of digital selling, with the increase of selling like the way Amazon does it. That mindset and kind of younger generations, I definitely think there's a more online presence, which I think is supporting an increased need for marketing. But it's a watch this space moment, isn't it?
It is. There's a lot changing. And as you said, just before we came on this call, we were chatting a bit about ChatGPT and how much things are accelerating and changing. I mean, marketing doesn't sit still for very long, and technology is, really accelerating that.
It is. I'm so interested in Chat GPT. I've only had a play around on it. I haven't done anything major on it. I think I asked it to tell me a story of a mermaid, and it regurgitated very quickly, very eloquently, very grammatically perfectly the Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid story, with a few differences. So I find Chat GPT really, really interesting. Tell me what your take on it is as a content writer.
So I am struggling to get access to it, but I have had a play around with somebody else's account. It's terrifying and exciting in equal measure, I feel. I think it's exciting what it can do. It's amazingly clever. The way it can scrape loads and loads of information together to create a cohesive article is fantastic, but I don't really think it's coming for our jobs anytime soon. I think you still need to do research and you'll still need to edit anything that it produces. So for instance, when I played around with it, some of the information that was in there was wrong. It had been misinterpreted from the website it took it from, and actually the information was used incorrectly. So it would take someone to go through that and say, right, well, actually that's wrong. We need to change this. And also checking the sources. Now, my understanding is at the moment, I don't think it gives sources, but certainly in my background as an editor and a journalist is to know your sources and to know they're reliable and try and get at least two that corroborate each other. So my fear might also be that it's using Wikipedia, for instance, to generate facts and factual information, which again, in a regulated sector, you need to be really, really careful with that and making false claims. So while I think it's very exciting that you can create like a 1,000-word article in a couple of minutes, I don't think the work is done, and I don't think it's going to completely take away any human element. The other thing I'd say is it's also scraping what's already out there. So the article, the tech goes out and finds all these different sources, this is my understanding, and puts them together in an article. Well, then there's no new viewpoints in that. There's no new voices. There's no new takes on anything. Whereas certainly a lot of what we do at Method is we talk to people, we run interviews, we chat to people and draw out unique perspectives or different types of expertise, which obviously an AI isn't going to be able to do.
Absolutely. The other thing I noticed when playing around with it, I asked a couple of questions specific around the insurance industry, and it told me, I'm sorry, I can't answer this. My sources are from 2 years ago or whatever it might be. Can't remember the exact time frame. So if you are wanting to create something very unique, fresh viewpoints, current, then it's not for you. I do wonder where it's going to go, because it's very much in its infancy at the moment. I do wonder what the progression of that will be and how that might look in 5 years' time. Maybe we should come on again in 5 years' time and do a chat GPT only podcast.
Well, there was just thinking back about the last 5 years. I remember when my last role was as an editor, we were starting to see these technologies rolling through. And someone had programmed one to create a film script, and it was bizarre. It was totally strange. Like it had basically been fed a lot of film scripts and then told, right, now write me a film script. And then the screenwriting company, they went ahead and made it, and it is completely bonkers and confusing and doesn't make any sense. Whereas now it seems that it's accelerated over those past few years to actually make sense. And the things that I have read that ChatGPT has written do make sense. So it has already come on leaps and bounds to this point. So yeah, in 5 years' time, I'd be really interested to see where it ends up.
I was listening to a podcast that's completely unrelated to insurance. It's Mo Gaudat, who was the Google X Chief Business Officer. Incredible man's written an incredible book called Solve for Happy. So his background is very technical, and he's very logical, and he's very mathematical. And in this podcast, he was talking about how AI at the moment is learning from every single interaction we have on the internet. It's all learning. And if you think of it as the toddler and how impressive the toddler is at this stage. And he said one thing that he is personally quite concerned about is the difference between AI in its adulthood in terms of intellect is the difference between Einstein and a fly in comparison to humans. And the question then becomes, why do you keep the fly around? So I'm fascinated by this whole kind of process. And hopefully, just bringing it back to the challenge of time and priority, things like this absolutely highlight the need for us to be visible and present with educative, informative, fresh, current ideas. So so I think it's really interesting.
It is. I think it's an exciting time to be alive, to see what happens.
It is. And very, very scary.
Yeah, I'm trying to focus on like the positive side of things, because if I think about the negatives, it could be quite terrifying.
I sometimes have a strong desire to move to the Outer Hebrides and take all tech from my children as the only way to like preserve their childhood, but that's a whole different podcast. So finding time versus priority, massive challenge. I think for many industries, but there's additional challenges in regulated industries. What do you think a second sort of challenge is for these type of industries for marketing?
We sort of, I have found consistently tech integration. So finding, getting a CRM integrated with legacy systems and things like that tend to be quite challenging. So there's again, with technology moving forwards, there's a lot you can do now with automations and automating communications. And I think there's a lot of challenges around getting that moving from legacy tech, or finding something that will connect with that so that you can pull out useful data. So segmenting your information and making sure that each segment is getting appropriate information. We see that that's quite a challenge sometimes if there's old tech in place. And it's difficult to move away from those because there's lots of data held in these legacy systems. So how do you move away from that?
I also think in terms of tech, the what's available out there is so huge, and it all seems to do a little bit of what you need. So you can end up in a situation where you've got several different systems almost talking to each other, but not quite. And actually, it can be an IT nightmare. For me, I'm not technical at all. I have to get my kids to put the TV on for me because it's a smart TV. We've lost the remote and you use an iPhone. So I'm not technical at all. But I find the world of technology completely mind-boggling. And I think that's a big problem, particularly if you're a smaller company and you don't have, the IT department that can go to and sort all of this out.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy solution by any means on it. I know that there are solutions coming through. I think there's like Actress has got plugins with CRMs and things like that. So there are solutions coming through, but there's no quick win, I don't think. But there are lots of benefits if you do go through with, installing a CRM that talks to your systems, because you can manage that data a lot better, keep it up to date, make sure that that people whose addresses are incorrect are removed from the system, and that the processes, the sales process is actually facilitated a lot of the time through those CRMs. So you can keep a clear view of who's a prospect, who's nearly a client, who is an existing client, who's a loyal client, and how you communicate with them. It does make life a lot easier. It's just, I think, getting those across the line with getting that tech in place is a bit of a challenge.
How much of a challenge do you think it is? So if you can get the tech in place, getting people to use it?
I think, like with all marketing, you have to focus on the benefits with the user and demonstrate, what it can do for your sales and for your client relationships. I think that always has to be the lead. If it can make client communications smoother, simpler, more straightforward, there's got to be lots of benefits in that. It just might take a bit of an effort at the beginning to work through all your sort of legacy data.
Yeah, mindset changes and new technologies. Two of the hardest hurdles to get over, but is a really legitimate challenge from a marketing and sales perspective for again many industries, but particularly regulated industries. When you're talking about GDPR and how if somebody hasn't contacted you within the last 12 months, do you have something within your system that automatically removes them? Do your systems speak to each other? If somebody unsubscribes from a newsletter, do they speak to each other? And those type of things are really real.
We see a lot of doubling up. So if we send out an e-shot for one of our clients and we get a bounce back, we then have to email the account exec who's responsible a lot of the time to have that data removed from the database. And
where there's manual things like that, that's where things drop through the cracks. And that's I think is one of the big challenges with the tech, isn't it? Because there's got to be manual bits in between. You're reliant on somebody, having their brain screwed on that day, not being too tired, not being too overwhelmed, just to remember the really important but really small tasks. One of the things that we've talked previously about as being a problem for marketeers in the insurance industry is the use of jargon, which I think is really interesting. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's natural that if you are working in an industry and you're very much involved in that industry, you don't even realize you're doing it. I think a lot of the time, I'm conscious that when, I speak to my mum about marketing, she has no idea what I'm talking about. I think it is a natural problem with just being in an industry and working in it and caring about it. But sometimes it helps to have someone from outside the industry to talk to and help interpret that. So a lot of the time with our clients, what we'll say is, you are the experts in what you do in insurance, but we are, the marketing communication specialists. So if we work together, we can help create something that will speak to the lay person who's not in the industry in a way that they will understand and be able to apply it to their life or their business. And so they understand the benefits. Because it's not a deliberate thing. I think it's just sometimes you don't realise that not everybody knows about a particular term or what a particular term means.
I think that's really true. I remember when I first started in the insurance industry, really, I can't remember what the acronym was, but there was something that was really basic, and I remember asking, "What's this?" in a training thing, and being mortified when I realised what it was. But it's, again, if you're not from the industry, how do you know? And if you are from the industry, you take for granted, don't you, what other people...
Yeah, I think it was hardening market was one of the terms that I'd never heard before. And that was, I think within the last 18 months, I've sort of become aware of what a hardening insurance market means. And I've been working in it for, in the industry for quite a long time, but I hadn't come across that term. And so I had to stop and say, hang on a minute, we probably should explain what this means.
Yeah.
If I'm not aware of it, what is it?
There is a little bit of a, I want to say ego, but ego is not the right word. In being able to say to somebody, "Stop! I don't understand what you're saying there," because, like I found in that training, it was an incredibly stupid question to everybody there, but to me, I'd never heard it before. So you don't know what you don't know till you know you don't know it. So there's a little bit of ego and sort of self worry that if you're putting things that are very jargon heavy out there, you turn people off because they don't want to look stupid. I think that's a really critical thing to be aware of when you're putting marketing material out.
I do think, I don't know how you feel about it, but if you get, I'm not just saying insurance, but legal documents or things like that, where you get the small print, how many people read those? Because actually they're so impenetrable. And I think that's the same with marketing is if your readers don't get it or made to feel like they're stupid or they've got a stupid question, you switch them off. A lot of the time people won't persevere because they don't want to. If they feel like they feel stupid, you lose them at that point.
I did a really interesting podcast just before Christmas, a really interesting one with Direct Line Group and their electric vehicle team, and they were talking about ICE vehicles. I now know that's internal combustion engine vehicles, i.e. not electric, but I didn't know. And I said on the podcast, what's that? I've just learned this new term, and I made a bit of a thing out of it. And I wasn't sure afterwards whether I just made myself look like an idiot or not. But actually, it's quite difficult to do that. And I think more people should go, hang on a minute, I don't understand what you're saying. Talk to me. But definitely jargon is a problem.
I think that's the thing with me in my career is that I've kind of prided myself on being nosy, and if there's something I don't understand, I'll be like, hang on a minute, can you go back and just explain that to me? But yeah, I hadn't really thought about it as a skill that not everybody sort of feels comfortable using, so that's really interesting.
I think it's a real skill. It's one that I've learnt, but in a relatively self-diminishing way, so I was make a little bit of a joke out of it, but a skill nonetheless. I get to where I'm going, and hopefully as a podcaster and reporter, that opens up for other people to go, hang on a minute, don't really know what you're talking about there. But no,
I think actually with insurance as well I think people can be intimidated by it. That they see a lot of terms that they don't understand and sort of just switch off. And I think that's one of the benefits of working with someone who doesn't actually get it, if for want of a better phrase, is that I will sit there and say, hang on a minute, I just don't understand. Can we go back? Because it can feel like a big responsibility. So I've just recently made a claim on my travel insurance and feeling like I don't understand the claims process for that particular provider. It was actually quite complicated, and thinking, I'd quite like someone to translate what I need to do next.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so top 3 challenges so far: finding time versus priority, integration with technology, particularly CRMs, the use of jargon. That's what it was. Another link that I think is really important that's often missed: between sales and marketing is, if you are a sales representative, say you're an account exec and you're sitting in front of your client and their renewal's gone up by, I don't know, 200%, and you're going, it's because of the hardening market, you've missed a big fundamental part of the marketing, which is de-jargonizing stuff. So that's another example of where the two work together, I think, and it's quite an important example. That's what the point was. Okay, fourth biggest challenge.
It sort of comes back around to the finding time priorities, but actually we found that reporting, a lot of companies, not just insurance, but just in general, find that reporting is a challenge on marketing, especially if they're using more traditional methods, say print advertising, leaflets and things like that, the reporting, it's a bit of a vicious circle, because if you don't get the reports with the data about how the marketing's performing, you can't learn from it. So therefore, is it worth prioritizing? So yeah, we do see that reporting and understanding where your marketing spend is going can be a challenge.
I think that links quite well to the insurance side, the tech integration side of things, because if you've got 5 different technologies, all have their own management data that you can pull out, and always with data, always there's discrepancies. So so you get kind of lost in, well, this says this and this says this, but they should say the same and they don't. So you get lost in trying to figure out which one's actually correct without taking the time to go, actually, this tells me that in January we had 15 new prospect meetings, for example. Mm-hmm. Of that, 10 went on to quote and we won 5. Why did we lose the 5 that we quoted for, and why didn't we get those 5? That's where the information should be looking at, but it can be quite difficult when you've got over-facing information. Tell me this. So one of the things we do, I think you guys might also do as well, is social media. We don't do a lot of it, but we do a couple of social medias. And we always do the reports at the end. There is so much out there about what you're looking at. What is it that you want to know? And what's your take on this? What do I want to know at the end of a month on my LinkedIn reporting?
So we try and be as transparent as possible and give as much information as possible, but then interpret it. So we do look at things like impressions, the number of times a social media post might have been seen. But we tend to find engagement rate is a better gauge of that, because of the algorithms, not everybody who follows you is going to see your content. But what we want to know is, of the ones that did see it, how many engaged, how many have liked or commented or shared your content. So where's that touch point come from? We also look at how much of that translates through to website views. So we will then go from that social media platform over to Google Analytics to see how many times, of those people that engaged, how much traffic went to your website.
Lucy, talking about reporting, talking about the type of stats that you're looking for on social media, there's a lot of vanity stats out there. What are your thoughts on that? Tell me what you think about it.
Yeah, so sort of vanity metrics are kind of misleading, I think, in some ways. So there'd be things like follow accounts. So we see a lot of businesses saying, I want to get my follow account to like 2,000, 5,000 on LinkedIn or Instagram. But it is just a vanity, because if those people aren't the right people, if they aren't your audience, they're just there to get the numbers up, it's not really that useful for you. What you need to see really is an engaged audience. So it might be that your audience is only 10 people, but if all 10 of those people are engaged and liking your content and sharing it and then going through to your website to, make an inquiry, those 10 people are far more valuable to you than 10,000 people who aren't engaged. So I would say just be wary of vanity metrics and being misled by numbers that aren't necessarily that useful to your overall objectives.
I think that's another link between sales and marketing that's often missed, is who do you want to be following your page and what do they want to hear? And therefore, what are we going to post? Because that's how you build an engaged audience, by having, a conversation and some strategizing around those topics. What do you look at for a good engagement rate?
I think it varies. I think it depends on who you are and where you're starting from. I think I think the average is something like, I want to say it's something like 3% engagement rate on most social media channels. So if you can get anything above that, that's fantastic. We've seen like certain posts do sort of 45% engagement rates, or like on a one-off, which we think is fantastic. But yeah, trying aiming for like the 5% or higher, I think it is a good aim. But and learn from what works. So certainly something that we do, and very much as part of the methods that we use, is, well, what worked? What can we learn from that? So if your audience, and certainly something we see with insurance brokers, is the behind the scenes type content works particularly well. So, putting faces to names, what they're doing, what's happening at your office. Are you having a charity bake sale? Are you doing some training? That kind of behind the scene content works really, really well, and learning from that. So actually, if there was a picture with lots of people from a training day, is there something else we can do to replicate that, to bring more people to life, to bring more of a sense of personality to the content, rather than just using stock images all the time? So look back at what's done well and what's got a high engagement rate in the past, and see how you can replicate that.
I think that mirrors my experience, or our experience with clients as well, is the personal posts far outweigh the others, even on LinkedIn. And it's not, here's my Christmas tree, or I had salmon for dinner. It is, the people behind the scenes. So I think that's really interesting. One of the things that we found gets really high engagement, because we do event reporting and we do podcasts, are bloopers videos. Really, really funny. And some people are a bit like, oh, can we do this? We're, professional. Yes, you can. It's bringing the people to life. We're all human, and it happens. So I think that's really important. Question for you. When you're looking at the engagement through to website stats, one of the things that I come up against is we don't sell on our website. We're not web people. We are people. So what do you say to that?
I think that it might be slightly, what's the word I'm looking for? I think people like to do research. So while you might not close the deal on your website, if someone's clicked through, they're interested in finding out more about you and what you can do for them. So consider, even if you're not selling through the website, how can you reassure them that you're not some fly-by-night firm, that your clients are happy with what you do and how you operate, how to get in touch with you, who to get in touch with, to make that inquiry. I think because people do research online, people do go to websites to find out more about you before getting in touch. So even if that's not how you close the majority of your sales, it's important to have a presence online, even if it is just to show that you're reliable and reputable, and a bit more about the team that you've got in place.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think is quite interesting, and a lot of people miss when they're looking at the metrics, is what demographics, what's your engagers demographic? If, for example, you sell, I don't know, insurance to high net worth individuals, and you are not a wholesale broker at all, but 80% of your engagement is coming from the insurance industry, it's your competitors checking out what you're doing. And that happens more than anybody realizes on social media. So it's, again, going back to the audience, that your followers are 80% of your followers based in Timbuktu and are insurance professionals. Do you sell to people in Timbuktu who are insurance professionals? No. Then there's some kind of strategizing to do on your marketing. That was quite an eye opener for me when I kind of first started.
The other thing I would also say is, lots of, to your argument about, we're not web people, we don't sell that way. I think there's also an expectation, well, in my experience, that younger generations do things differently as well. So I technically fall within the millennial bracket. I will always go online to find out information before I get in touch with someone. And if there's a live chat on that website, which means I don't have to make a phone call, so I can have it, have a chat while I'm doing something else, I will do that every single time. And I think, in my experience and my understanding, is that is the way the world is going across the majority of industries. Is we're getting more and more used to it, and the younger generations in particular are going towards the more web-based route. And a lot of them don't like the phone. I've been speaking to lots of people recently who work with Gen Z, and they don't like to speak on the phone at all. So having a website that can take messages or have live chat will open you up to that new generation that's coming up through the workplace and into adulthood.
I think that's really important. Just watching how my children interact, and they're nowhere near work age, that, you know, the oldest is 13, 11 and 7, but it is very chat orientated. So I just think that is going to get a bigger and bigger thing as we go through. Okay, so we've done 4 of our top challenges for marketing for regulated industries. Talk to me about the 5th biggest challenge that you have identified in your experience.
So actually it comes again full circle back to the compliance side of things and the regulation. Now, it is important. We know it's important that, you know, that you treat customers fairly and that your messaging doesn't misrepresent you or what you're offering. But it can sometimes create a bit of a bottleneck that compliance, you know, if you have a strategy and a plan and you're producing lots of marketing materials, it can be quite onerous on a compliance person to get that signed off. So we do find that working with compliance and chatting to them, getting to know them, what they like, what they don't like, does really help. But it can, you know, there's always stumbling blocks. You come across something that's never happened before, and there's a bit of a toing and froing about whether you can say it or not. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge. And
I think I did a podcast not that long ago with talking about the consumer duty changes that are coming in this year. And I think it makes a lot of people nervous. So working with somebody that is aware of these things, I think is really, really important, unless you have an internal team that can do it. But again, I think that's certainly
But having been in-house, even certainly I've had it having been in-house, you know the compliance person, you get on really well, but there will, you know, it's still important for the marketing team, the compliance team to talk to each other to make sure that, you know, both sides are happy and that you're getting your messaging out there.
Absolutely. Lucy, I have found this really informative, and it's really nice to have a chat to a fellow marketeer about some of the things that I find. And it's also really nice to know that you find it too. So, you know, it's not just me out there on my own. So I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Me too. It's been a really great experience having a chat to you about the things that you've found and the people you've spoken to.
Hopefully we can do this again in a few months and see what's moved on, any new ideas, where we are with ChatGPT, and and whether we should all go and live in a hole or something like that.
Let's all move to the Hebrides quick.
Yes, Hebrides, where there's no technology whatsoever. I just want to say thank you very much. This episode will be airing live shortly. So if you've got any questions after listening, please get in contact with Lucy or myself. Lucy, are you happy that I put your contact details in the show notes?
Absolutely. So please do get in touch.
Super. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Insurance Brokers podcast. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to subscribe on your chosen podcast streaming platform and check us out on YouTube.